What if I told you that one single word didn't just cause drama, but quietly exposed an entire family system that had been cracking for years? Not yelling, not fighting, not chaos, but silence. The kind of silence that tells you everything, because the real shock isn't what was said, it's who didn't deny it, and why that reaction changed how viewers now see every single moment that came before. This is not just a comment, this is a turning point, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Okay, besties, let's talk about the moment that quietly cracked open an entire family system. And no, it wasn't yelling or accusations or even a direct confrontation. It was one single word, and more importantly, the reaction to that word that changed everything. Because when a family has survived for decades on silence, on careful wording, on emotional restraint, the first real signal of truth is not what is said, but what is not denied. And that is exactly where this situation becomes impossible to ignore. Because what happened here was not random, it was not impulsive, and it certainly was not online cruelty. This was years of emotional imbalance, favoritism, and unspoken tension finally surfacing in a way that no one could fully control anymore. And that is why this moment matters so much more than people initially realize. Because the comment that caused all of this did not appear out of thin air. It landed with weight because it touched something real, something that had been quietly building behind closed doors for a very long time. And before anyone rushes to dismiss it as harsh or out of context, it is important to understand that moments like this do not explode unless there is already pressure underneath. And that pressure has been visible to viewers for years, even if it was never directly acknowledged out loud. And that is why the reaction that followed became the real story. Not outrage, not denial, not shock, but careful, measured silence. Because silence in this family has always spoken louder than confrontation. And when someone with deep first-hand knowledge of the family dynamic chooses not to immediately shut something down, it signals recognition rather than rejection. And that is where the discomfort begins. Because if something is entirely untrue, it is usually easy to say so. But when something hits close to a reality people have learned to tiptoe around, it creates pause, reflection, and restraint. And that pause told viewers far more than any defensive statement ever could. And this is where longtime watchers felt that shift in real time, because suddenly the unspoken rules were no longer holding the structure together, and the audience could feel that something had fundamentally changed. And to understand why this mattered, we have to understand who was reacting, because this was not a distant observer or a casual commentator. This was someone who has lived inside this family system, who has watched patterns repeat, who has seen how emotional resources, attention, and approval were distributed unevenly, and who has historically been cautious about speaking publicly, not because of fear, but because of awareness of consequences, awareness of how words echo long after the cameras stop rolling. And when someone like that allows a statement to stand without immediate dismissal, it tells you that the observation behind it is not new, it is familiar. And that familiarity is what made viewers lean in rather than turn away. Because suddenly it felt like the audience was being allowed to see what insiders have known for years. And this is why the timing matters so much, because the children are no longer children. They are adults with their own families, their own perspectives, and their own ability to analyze what they grew up experiencing. And what once could be explained away as complicated parenting or situational stress now looks very different through adult eyes. And that reevaluation is happening publicly at the same time the show continues to present a carefully constructed narrative. And that tension between lived experience and curated storytelling is where this moment ignited, because viewers are not just watching reactions, they are watching recognition. unfolds. And the reason this is so compelling is because it mirrors something deeply human, the realization that what you were told to normalize was never actually balanced. And that realization does not come with shouting, it comes with quiet recalibration, and that is exactly what happened here. And once that recalibration begins, it cannot be undone because people start replaying old moments with new understanding, and suddenly, scenes that once felt confusing now make sense. Patterns become visible, emotional investments are re-examined, and loyalty itself begins to feel complicated. And that is why this moment refuses to stay small, because it connects too many dots at once, and it validates too many long-held suspicions. And the family dynamic that once relied on selective acknowledgement can no longer depend on it, because the audience has changed too. They are more analytical, more vocal, and less willing to accept surface explanations. And this reaction gave them confirmation without ever spelling it out. And that is why people cannot stop talking about it, because it did not feel manufactured. It felt inevitable, like a pressure valve finally releasing. And once that happens, there is no going back to pretending everything is fine. Now, let's talk about why this moment ripples so far beyond one exchange. Because this is not about labeling or name-calling. It is about systems, power, and long-term emotional consequence. And within this family structure, power has always been distributed in ways that were subtle but consistent. Emotional priorities were set. Certain voices carried more weight, and others learned to stay quiet to keep peace. And when that kind of environment exists for decades, it shapes behavior, identity, and relationships in ways that do not disappear just because children grow up or households change. And that is why reactions matter more than words, because reactions reveal what has been protected and what has been tolerated, and who has learned that challenging certain dynamics comes at a cost. And this is where the role of the central authority figure becomes impossible to separate from the conversation. Because influence does not operate in isolation, it is reinforced and maintained through validation and protection. And when favoritism exists, even unintentionally, it creates imbalance that everyone feels, even if no one names it. And over time, that imbalance becomes emotional currency. Some people receive reassurance, access, and support more freely, while others learn to self-regulate, suppress, or distance themselves. And that dynamic does not vanish, it evolves. And when adult children begin to speak or reflect publicly, it forces the entire system into view. And that is what made this moment so powerful, because it indirectly questioned not just individual behavior, but the structure that allowed that behavior to go unquestioned for so long. And the reason viewers are so invested is because they recognize these dynamics from their own lives, even outside of this family context. Favoritism, emotional hierarchy, and selective validation are not unique to any one household. And watching them be slowly unpacked on screen creates both discomfort and validation. And that dual response keeps people watching because it feels real and layered rather than sensational. And this is where production plays its quiet role, because reality television thrives on amplifying moments that already carry emotional weight. But amplification does not create the truth. It simply magnifies what already exists. And in this case, the editing pauses and framing allowed viewers to sit with the implications rather than be told what to think. And that restraint made the moment land harder because it trusted the audience to connect the dots. And when audiences feel trusted, they stay engaged. And the brilliance of the response here is that it acknowledged complexity without escalating conflict. It allowed viewers to understand that calling out patterns does not require aggression, it requires clarity. And clarity can be more destabilizing than anger because it leaves no easy rebuttal. And that is why the ripple effects are still unfolding, because once clarity enters a system built. And this is why this moment matters, because it was never about a single word. It was about what that word revealed: silence, favoritism, and long-standing emotional imbalance finally coming into focus. This wasn't drama for shock value, it was recognition. And once recognition happens, the story changes forever. So the real question now isn't what was said, it's what happens next, and whether the family can move forward now that everyone sees what can no longer be unseen.